Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thanks so much for coming out for Tom DePort's presentation. There's this thing about the Irish. Freud supposedly said that psychoanalysis was completely wasted on the Irish. That I think the exact quote was that as a species, they are impervious. They are impervious to mental improvement, or something like that. But actually, I thought some of you know that I enjoy sort of playing with psychoanalysis sometimes, and I was thinking, could you actually make something out of that? I was thinking about Tom's project for the Venice Biennale. This is 2000.
Yeah.
2000.
Yeah.
It was the first time Ireland had ever been in the Venice Biennale. For some, they were invited, and so it was a big deal. But of course, no money. And this is made. It looks like it might be brick, but it's not brick. It is brick, but it's made not from clay, but from compressed bog. And what these things are, we know them as Duralogs, right? The compressed stuff, except in Ireland it's compressed peat, and they use it for fuel, for fire. And that's what the bricks are made of. So the Irish government donated it. I mean, it's bog, it's peat, so it didn't cost anything. And then how does it work? The Italians had to receive it as a gift.
It was an international exchange of land.
Yeah. So you don't have to pay taxes. So you don't even have to pay because it's exchange.
So we couldn't afford to bring it back. It's a Trojan horse.
And so they gave it away to the Venetians to burn.
No, not to burn.
Yes.
No, as fertilizer, because you mulch it, and it's really good fertilizer.
See, even better. Return it to the soil. So in Freudianism, to analyze a symptom, if you have a repetition, washing your hands too much, or a twitch or something, the idea is if you go to the heart of the symptom, you have to then map an unknown cause onto a kind of symbolic order. And if you can succeed in interpreting that initial trauma, that unthinkable, unsayable trauma, if you can map it onto a pre-existing symbolic order, you worked out the symptom. You don't cure, but you've worked through it, Freud would say. And I think when you look at Tom's architecture today, none of it will look like it ought to, in a way, but it will look almost like it ought to. Even this, you would almost say it's like it's almost Hegelian in its power, except it's not a pyramid, it's not properly a cube, and the Irish don't have Hegel either. They have like Bogman. Bogman is
We have Joyce.
You have Joyce. You have Joyce. You do have Joyce. And you'll see in his architecture, there's something. Sometimes it seems almost mythical. It seems almost vernacular, but it's always a little bit off. It doesn't map onto a pre-existing symbolic order. But when in psychoanalysis, when it won't map onto a symbolic order, and Joyce is the paradigm of this for Lacan, you have to invent a kind of idiolect. You have to invent a new narrative. You can't work with a pre-existing symbolic order. You have to invent a new one, which is what Lacan said Joyce had to do, because he also wasn't working with the pre-existing order. So I think it actually works, this being impervious to psychoanalytic interpretation. In any case, that's going to be my Leanne Suen, who helps me with these introductions. Obviously, I didn't use hers today, but she did say, and I will use this, that Tom's work appears to be between myth and pun. And I liked it very much because it has the sort of wit of punning, and maybe even it's certainly not glib, but the pun, but it also has something much deeper, much more careful, much more symptomatic, maybe even at times traumatic. Any case, That's my version of it. Welcome, Tom.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. That was really nice. Thank you for coming. Pre-existing orders. We were in here yesterday, second core, and there was two beautiful presentations, and then there was a kind of a questions and answers thing, which was really interesting, but it always seems to come back to the same question, which is what is architecture? What can we learn, and what can we do about it? So I'm going to do a terrible thing now, and I'm going to read something for a little bit. And if you bear with me, it's for atmosphere. It's mostly fact. Well, it's really, yeah, it's an interpolation. There's fiction. It's like everything, really. And and then I'll show you some pictures. The quotes are in quote. So I'm going to go quote. So quote, am I to get up? He looks at his watch, 5:30 a.m. His face changes from azure to cyan in the time machine. He appears to wear a halo, probably caused by ice crystals in the curve of atmosphere behind him. 5:36 a.m. They make small talk. He is shaved. He is wired under his skin, under polyester, under rubber, and drawn from pit to groin in steel cable. He is teased, full length, in blue hand knit, and made conspicuous in orange nylon overall. He is dressed, they are quiet. He asks for music. In his ear, the piano opening to 4 songs on verses. Opus 86 unfurls, part 1, arranged for baritone and orchestra. 5:50 a.m. In the mirror, the SK-1 becomes him. Anagram of diving suit for space, codename Falcon. Built at Factory 918, the 23 kilograms of mortification allow him to fall 8 kilometers to splashdown, when the carbon dioxide neck ring inflates for life support for 3 days at minus 15 degrees, a mirror up one sleeve. He looks at his watch. 6 a.m. Outside, the cloud is lit from below, pinkish. Dawn watches the light cusp the bow of the 7, erected on CC-1 yesterday. A 2-stage instrument, 34 meters high. The 3-meter girth of the R-7A is fluted, not for proportion, but for propulsion. 280 metric tons of fuel with a thrust of almost 16 kilonewtons, capable of 8,800 kilometers to an accuracy of 5. The nitrous oxide column is frozen white in the antithesis of the morning. Dawn is the head of Project Section 9, known on file as number 20 and codenamed for the moment when the sun is 18 degrees below the morning horizon. His real name is a secret. It'll be released only after his death, when a shed, then a street, then a city, once on the sea, will be named after him, and then a crater on the far side of the moon, and then an asteroid, number 1855, and then a stamp with his profile on it. Known informally by his initials, SK is 54 years old. He is the chief designer. Rocket engine tests have damaged the hairs in his inner ear, and now birdsong is indistinct. Longsight has come with age, but he can no longer see red, green or blue. It's a genetic condition, but it's still good in silhouette identification. He reads tea leaves, the ritual greater than the taste perhaps, from the present, clockwise from the rim, to the handle spiring downward into the future. The leaves flock and migrate, a partridge alights. He turns the cup, the infusion deepens. He sees a falcon in the bushes, cast from day beyond night and back. He sees weight loss and delay, malfunction and fall. A kite, upside down. A trick up his sleeve. The leaf 0, a circle of fire. A 4,725 kilogram bounce. A swallow, lettered east. At 340 degrees over 108 minutes. At 28,000 kilometers per hour at an inclination of 64.95 degrees. The leaves rustle, a goose, mating a swan, a captain by launch and a major by landing, an asteroid, number 772 looms in his memory every 4.0173 years. A lip will be called after him on the far side of the moon, puckered in collapsed depressions over 265 kilometers. A winged man. Astronauts will salute him, a crow. They will drink tea for a photograph at the copy of his house on the morning of March 9, which will always be overcast in his honour, a swallow. They will sign his visitor's book in his office, preserved for the camera, and make no comment. They will fly to Bacanur, once Turayan, from which he is about to depart, a raven. They will bring carnations to his ashes on the day before, and will avoid saying, I can't pronounce it, but it means the last, and instead use, I can't pronounce that either, but they will use final. That evening at the hotel, they will say little or nothing. That morning, they will scratch their names on their doors and drive to the launch pad, stopping once, as he did, a griffin. He sees the first human in space as male, between 25 and 30 years old, no taller than 1.75 meters, and no heavier than 72 kilograms, 5'2", 27 years old, comfortable in isolation and dejection, and with a great smile. 6:12 a.m. The sun rises slowly on the stop bus, engine running. He faces into the back, left-hand wheel, concentrates on the pale stretch of the sky, and in a slow arc urinates. He looks at his watch. 6:26 a.m. Altitude 34 meters, visibility fair. He nods twice. He hums the Shostakovich. He lifts both arms, once to Dawn at ground control and once to the music in his head. He turns to be lifted astride the intercontinental ballistic missile. He's put in harness. He's connected to the machine. He smiles. His visor is closed. In the capsule, he is reclined at 65 degrees, his head slightly aft. He looks up. He looks at his watch. Quote, I was alone with the instruments now illuminated, not by sunlight, but by artificial lighting. I heard everything that was being done outside the ship. 7:10, the radio fizzes. He speaks. Quote, Hello, Earth. I am Cosmonaut. I have tested the communications. The tumblers on the control panel are in the assigned initial position. The globe is at the point of division. Pressure in the cabin unity. Humidity 65%. Temperature 19 degrees Celsius. Pressure in the compartment 1.12. In orientation systems normal. I feel fine and I'm ready for the start. Dawn replies. Now the translation is the original translation. Got fine you, got you. Pings, how do you read? You heard me, right? Like me? He replies, you hear perfectly. 8:27, he smiles for the camera, he looks at his watch. 9:01, Dawn recites. Key put to drain. Drain valve closed. Air purge. Went cable mast. Idle run. Ignition. Home. Get up. The spaceman replies at a slight delay. Which means you went, both singular and plural. He probably used the past tense for urgency that Wednesday morning, his exclamation mark indicating high volume, assumption, and a drawing of liftoff. The white noise continues to increase, inverse to amplitude. At an altitude of 49 millimeters, the fuel quartet frees its suspension, counterweight swing, the props back and away. He hears a trill sharp over the cloud of sound. The guys fall, and he looks at his watch, 9:07. The giant ship shuddered, quote, and slowly, very slowly lifted from the launching pad. The roar was not louder than one hears in the cabin of a jet aircraft, but it contained a multitude of new shades and pitches that no composer has ever put down in music, or any musical instrument or human voice has yet to reproduce. Flames were ejected from the nozzles, and in the noise of the increasingly roaring engines, the tall and heavy hull of the multi-stage rocket rose, as though reluctantly, above the starting ground. Like a living sapient being in meditation, slightly trembling, the rocket hovered for a moment or two close to the ground, and then imperceptibly, with a whirling vortex of fire behind, disappeared into the field of vision, leaving a fiery trail in the sky. 9:09. The pillar dances beneath him, fuller and faster. The third law of motion is insistent. His soft tissue deforms, and body fluids redistribute. The column accelerates upward at 175 kilometers per hour per second. Dawn's voice is compressed in his ear. Quote, I became part of the machine. All the parts of the machine became transmitters of my will. The machine was obedient to my wishes and did whatever I wanted it to. At 50 feet, his blood is driven downward, his speech thickens, his sight blurs, the column becomes a merry-go-round, curling upward in the porthole. Time slows. At 60 feet, his blood stills, he cannot speak. He sees himself falling from the column. Time stops. At 3,710 feet, his blood pools, the column disappears, lovely in the east light, outscrolling in Acanthus. At 1,000 meters, he is oxygen deficient. His heart rate rises from 66 to 158 beats per minute. After 120 seconds, the 4 booster sections are exhausted, shut down and shear away, almost slowly. After 156 seconds, his vision clears, the Fairley detaches and buffets away. After 676 seconds, the column is spent and discarded. At 581,360 feet, he is jerked. 9:17 a.m. The circle is punctured, orbit insertion is achieved, and like a flower, Siberia passes below. Quote, he says, "I see Earth, it is so beautiful." Dawn asks, "What does the water surface look like?" He says, "Darkish, with faintly gleaming spots." Dawn asks, "Do you get the feeling that our planet is round?" So, he's up there in orbit, and he's looking back down. He's in the cabin. This is number 4 is I, which is capitalized. In Russian, it's vzor, which is vision, and it's his locator. It's a lattice. It's a lens. It's a lattice lens, and around it, it's surrounded by lights. When orbit alignment is correct, when his horizon and the Earth's shape coincide, all the lights are on. If not, the anchor hold is not true, and it's shipwreck. He sees clouds. Weather. This is a sculpture. It's a monument to, it's called Temperance. It's a monument to Arethusa. It's a 6 mil steel, 1 meter high, 3 meters square, oriented north, rainwater collector that's frustrated because her letters, her name is cut into the steel. So the collected waters leak out onto, at midday, the North Point, which is the capital of Hooray in the shadow. He sees hills and mountains. These are acoustic baffles. On the side of a motorway in London, it's a recursive tiling pattern. They can exploit any piece of ground that they can. And below them you see, on the square there, a little pump house I'll show you later. And above it is the overpass. He sees fences, he sees boundaries. This is a piece of anti-glare mesh, creased and folded, and creased for strength and moire, and then the plan and the section become one and the same thing. It goes on for a mile and a half. It expands visually as you go along it longitudinally. The view opens as you look at it for security at 90 degrees. The bottom of it is covered in road marking paint, which has got glass in it so that it bounces up headlights into it. It makes a rhythm. He sees a camp, a tent, in this case made out of brass. It's an acoustic instrument. It's about sound and it's about vision. It's a primitive hut, the triangle. He sees the hut in the clearing, then he sees the house in the clearing. The house is found, it's in concrete. It's tempered only where it needs to be. It's the upper floor plan. It's adjusted inside in concrete. The elevations swing around. The square plan is recursive in this show. The square plan is incredibly economical. The spans go both ways. You can get maximum volume from minimum construction, rather like the sphere in terms of. It also does an interesting thing in that it has kind of only 2 points of view, the oblique and the frontal, and so it kind of forces perspective and forces the program around it. So here you see it downstairs. It starts to operate as a plan of rooms. The insertion is the cruciform in the middle, which is a bath and the stairs, and the partitions. The bath opens up as a grotto. And then it starts to impact on all the buildings around it. This is an old farmyard. And the existing buildings are then cut to make a kind of a paradise garden, which is an enfilade or a sequence kind of walkabout garden, as they would call it. But also, below it, it starts to make walled gardens. It starts to separate, like Eden is divided. It starts to separate into cloisters, into orders of one geometry which are existing, which is a kind of building geometry against the field pattern. And by doing that, it forces perspective between the two orders. On the right is a found hen house, which in the cloister now becomes a parlour. Then the section, it happens in the same way. The perspective is forced between the mountain on the left and the sea down to the right. There's a 14-metre fall across it. So cut and fill, terracing, adjusts the ground, but leaves the buildings in place. And then it adjusts the buildings, and then finally it adds a new square building. So there are 3, 4, 5 square houses in this thing. It expands the view and borrows the surroundings. The name of that place is Dysart. I often name projects have nicknames, or they're sometimes terms of endearment. Sometimes it's just quicker to use them. But that's actually that became the address of that place. So Dysart is Dysart, Desert, 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 Desert. I mean, it's always phonetic all the way back to the hieroglyphic, which is desert, which is the read top down. It's an open hand, a basin of water, a pair of lips, a small mountain. And the sign on the right is determinative, and it's the land, the strange land, which is west of the Nile. Desert, a retreat and an attack. The holiday house, the square plan, X marks the spot. 4 stone walls, sliding screens, as little footprint as possible, as little adjustment to the landscape as possible. Inside and outside are as close as possible. Circumstances are extenuated by the sliding away of the doors. Say in the bathroom, suddenly it becomes in a field when you slide it away. Square plan, slightly grander, sort of a manse house. All the elevations are exactly the same. The front door is only indicated by a doorbell and the approach road. It's for a photographer, so the dilemma of how he views becomes solved in a kind of a hauteur. So the game becomes again a reorganisation of without and within. The upper floor plan is living with the stairs and a bathroom that borrows through the view, with some bedrooms off it, and downstairs then becomes a kind of a circulation around living and services, a bedroom and a studio. The square plan then becomes compressed as it meets the outer suburbs. This one is in a garden city, unbuilt, top lit, servant and served, upper floor plan, stairs in the middle, deep recesses north, south, east and west for cross ventilation of rooms, and then front door, back door, side entrance, south face have these small terraces that become useful and symbolic. It makes faces and it mimics its neighbours. It goes deeper into town and it spans across a party wall as a mews, again top lit, again on the stairs, top floor plan, bottom section, it spans. It congregates a 2-family house, left and right, with a shared stair hall. Stone walls are now on a concrete plinth. Plan is inverted. Upper floor plan, slots of stairs, light coming through them. A shared void over a dining table becomes then 3 kinds of living spaces which conjoin in the middle around the table and all the backup spaces. So the house then, as it gets in closer to the town, becomes a yard. Oh, wrong button. So the yard is, curiously, isn't it? It's a calogram. It's kind of the smallest outdoor space that's usable. This is maybe the man in the spaceship, as drawn by Leonardo after Vitruvius. It's interesting to note that the setting out of the square and the circle come from different positions, his groin and his navel. So the return starts to push in. We call it a return. I don't know if you use that term here, where it's generally on old houses, you have a box out the back which take up the kitchen and all the services, the bathroom, and then it starts to grow as time goes on and gets bigger as the house has different attitudes about the outside and the inside, and it starts to take over the garden. In this case, on the left, you can see in the section is for a professor. That's where he keeps his books, and below that is a little servant space, a back kitchen, and we don't want to deny any of the space to the garden, so that becomes a little covered spot where you can put a bench, not there. It grows further, it becomes a triple cube room for a gallerist, with the implications of a courtyard at the end, a comedy of rooms, again of very small ones, and one far too big one. The servant spaces and the served space, all the doors are identical, so one is the one going into a cupboard, is one going into a study. It goes on again, the return wraps around, starting to form a courtyard. The covered space can open back. It makes a dining room in a house that's too small, and a Duchamp door flips between bathroom and kitchen. It goes on again around an existing courtyard as a mews, where a cube of space 2.4 by 2.4 is doubled and tripled up around in a small spiral as a house. It takes over a complete plot. 3 rooms subdivided, the middle servant space of the bathroom and kitchen, the outer servant space of the courtyard. This is the owner, he makes collages, that's his courtyard, and that's his bedroom behind. It goes in the return house then, the terraced return becomes inverted, goes back to front and goes underground, but still the dimensions of the city courtyard extrapolate. So the upper floor plan, again, sliding screens between the programme. The entire project is walled, so you're making all the views, and all the light comes from above, just like in a town. So below ground, the bedrooms are separated in the same way. You go bathroom, and then outside bathroom, which is a jacuzzi between the bedrooms, and the dogleg comes back to a double height toilet. It goes further and becomes a surround where the courtyard is in a circulation. This lady makes clothes or designs clothes, but she loves plants. So it's kitchen, soil room, which is where plants can be grown indoors in the ground, bathroom, greenhouse, all around this object, which becomes reflective and allows some kind of privacy and generates a small sense of meander in a very small house. The same house, 3 doors down, mirrored. The room becomes more greedy and the courtyard is pushed to the corner. More or less the same house again. The house now becomes just the bedrooms, and the whole plot at the back is eaten up by the courtyard house. Again, cross-ventilated rooms, which are courtyards, and then the back garden becomes a courtyard as well. And then finally, a house and a mews becomes just a sequence of courtyards. There's no looking out at all. It's more like the House of the Mysteries or something. Everything is coming from above on a deep roof and spotlights. It goes further into the town and it interlocks with existing spaces, connects up the fabric, and then wraps around itself as an outdoor staircase and becomes 5 apartments, 2 interlocking as duplexes, and the other 3 stacked and closing the deal around the stairs. This is a critique. This one is where this is urban generated housing, which is where the landscape is destroyed by. Oh yeah, thanks. By suburbanizations. This is an idea about compression, about bringing inhabitation closer together in a taller scaled object, which is a tower house, the only familiar kind of tall object in the Irish landscape. And then it adopts the strategy of pushing all the services to the outside, pushing the windows through it, and placing the rooms as a kind of a round plan around, so that everybody has 3 or 4 orientations as they track around a central service core with patio on the top and carport or daycare or whatever on the ground floor. So it develops a set of plans like this. So so looking at the landscape, it becomes then this question of how do we see? And by this stage, our hero is entering into nighttime. This is the image at ground control, and he's looking through. He's got a porthole to his right, a porthole to his left, and at his feet is eye, capitalized, the visor, the lens that I was pointing out to you. So you can see he's talking about it there in his report back. So the window as a project becomes a cinema where what you're viewing in the screen in section tilted is actually back projecting an image, so that while you're watching it in an aperture that's Academy ratio, which is a door, as the lady is, on the other side, the window, which is Academy ratio, somebody is watching you. So she's watching a film of a woman watching a film while she's being overlooked. So this is the kind of things that you see inside. So the window becomes then a question of a cinema, a question of nighttime, a question of other kinds of framing, other kinds of apertures, and not a black box. That still it's a place that has light and air and so on. So the strategy of the tower house comes quickly to mind again, in that you push all the program to the edges, and then you have a black box at its heart. This isn't our hero. This is the Book of Revelations. On the right, which is what this is a dedication piece, 16th century gravestone, which we molded and put back in, reversed into the concrete of the building, and then it's viewed a metre away across the slot through a window by Pat Scott. So all the windows in this building are coloured except for one. And the window itself is super simple. It's oversized casement that can flip with again just a galvanized metal sill, again oversized for display, and for very practical reasons. It's in Galway. It rains a lot. The plans bottom up, underground, ground. So cinema, the big cinema is below ground. You have the kiosk on the left and an existing building that's adjusted. You have a cafe here, and you have services all around. The space in between the two is the foyer. It's outside. We didn't have enough room. It was basically a house in its garden. So the building is too big for its site, and so has to react. Upper floor becomes a bar and offices. Up again, you have another cinema. And you can see that the staircases, the fire staircases, are travelling around in the interstices, connecting sometimes to the town and sometimes back into themselves. They're not tempered. The only rooms that are tempered are the actual rooms that you sit in. So you're wearing your coat until you get into the cinema, then you take it off. So the acoustic management, the temperature management, the deluxe, the red curtain, all of that happens within. Outside, you're in untempered with glazing, untempered without glazing, or you're just outside. So the calibration goes right through from the town to your seat and reverses back out again. So the only thing that happens really for a while is the colour of the light that you're in, and then the amount of light that you're in. So it goes up again. So these windows start to, as you're coming out or going in, they adjust the town. So coming out of the movie, it's a filter, or they're gelled, if you like, in movies. They start to then colour the rooms and the architecture. Again, it's a pitched roof which just takes the consequences of the site and becomes picturesque through its orientation. The facades then are extrapolated, all the windows are the same, so the positioning of the windows becomes the dialogue between the inside and the outside. This is the foyer. We've got our coats on. On the left is the front door. On the right is that little window. That's the snug in the bar. So that's where you look down and wait for your date. And here on the window is where you buy your ticket and your popcorn. So you can see it in section here. The temperate rooms are coloured. The rest is outside, essentially, or degrees of the same. So that's the other half of that little window I pointed out to you. So in that window, it's split. All the layers are then all the tempering is put in on different layers, and they don't quite meet. And then you exploit the difference. So thermal insulation, curtain, thermal insulation, timber lining, frame, screen, door, primary structure, they have all at least a tolerance of 100 mil. So there's a game then in the misfit of this, which is about construction as much as it's about delight. So this window is actually divided in two. One half is inside, one half is outside. But in fact, the outside is inside, as you can see in that picture. That's outside. It just has a door. Then the windows go through. They become a sign. For instance, the Sea of Palace is you can actually see through it. The neon isn't in yet. And then it becomes a public house. It becomes a type, a silo, a church, a cinema in the town, an orientation device. It responds to its context as you move around. It tries to be a building that you can move around, although in fact it's just a corner. And then on the top it has a weather vane, which is a silhouette of the client, in fact, with a chasing herself, with a projection cone for an eye, looking for north. So by this stage, he's furthest away. He's at apogee. So he's hanging there like a comma, like the comma between previous and next. And he's spinning. Radio contact is gone. He's in the void. He's thinking about circles. Or roundabouts. You don't have roundabouts here, really. A little bit? What do you call them something else? You have a nicer name.
Rotunda.
Rotaries, yeah. Yeah, all the same. Same type, yeah. But this isn't quite one, because this is an antique one. This is a really old junction between a Roman road and a 19th century road. And it's got an antique overpass over it. But this is a sign, basically. It's just about going around and around. 76 columns with taxi runway lights on top of it. It's called Holding Pattern. It marks the entrance between one place and another, between Barking and Dalgenham. It's a gate. It's a garden. This is a memorial to victims of abuse. This is about memory. It also contributes to a picturesque garden in the manner of maybe, you know, those really frilly bits on the edge of those plans, the really curly bits in those early English plans. It's one of those. This is the entrance to a train station. It's a place to wait. So this thing, as the train comes in, it's set up in a way that as the train comes in, it rotates. You can see it on the right. It's made out of copper. These are glasses, and behind is high-low. This is a small precast tripartite circle developed into a triangle. This allows planting of trees on existing surfaces, and then the joints extrapolate as the ground plane of in situ concrete to make place. This is called Tributary. It's a song, I suppose, again to the rain and to the River Liffey. This is Islands Bridge. This is this dirty piece of wetland here. It's the point where the salt water meets the sweet water of the Liffey. It's tidal. It's also the Temple of Vesta. It's the point where the town throws the ashes back into the river. So you get this disc of still water in a tidal condition momentarily, and it becomes a mirror. This is a game, again on a circle, 7x7 grid, again made by Turf. An old game on Bran Dubh, which is a game that's a Viking game that has travelled and gotten smaller actually as they move westwards. So by the time we get to Ireland, it's played on 49 pegs. Nobody knows. What's interesting about this one is nobody knows. It's described in the annals in great detail, but nobody has a record of the boards. So it was kind of a nice thing to try and refigure the board. But on Bran Dubh is a game not like chess. But on Bran Dubh is an island game. It's what I imagine the Vikings were doing. It's a training game. It's a strategy game. It's a consolation. It's about how do you invade an island. So at the middle is on Bran Dubh. She's outnumbered, and she's playing for stalemate. So it's endgame. It's an endgame. It's an endgame project. Again, we compress Turf and we cut it into the figures. There's 3 figures. There's on Bran Dubh, which is the raven. There's the rooks, and then there's the crows. The crows surround, and so it goes. That's the setup on the left. These are the pieces. That's a rook. They're also little architectures, of course. Butterfly roofs and pitched roofs. And that's the raven. That piece doesn't quite sit straight. It sits in a particular way, which I think you can see. See her there in the middle? And that's because, now, on Bran Dubh traditionally is crow, you know, the lamenter. She's the one that flies over the battlefield and chooses who will die. She's the banshee. She's very much in all Celtic mythology. She goes right through. Corbu is the same. So this is when you get it in the post. You get it as a slot of turf cut like that. You take the band off, and you have the pieces. You have the felt rolled. This is a glass for drinking whiskey. Lead cut crystal. These are just prototypes on the right. It's just an erosion. It's a cutting of glass. This is a small stage set that can travel. It was in Washington last year. This is an exchange place of language. It's an intimacy within a bigger field, and it's eminently transportable. This is a light made in Murano for an exhibition piece about a stairs. It's called 4 a.m. It's about going somewhere and being frustrated and going back down again. It smells of lavender, like Venice. It smells of lavender. It's a little bridge. And it's an exercise in joinery and linen, essentially. But underneath the stairs, it's lit by the high-low, but in section there's something under the stairs. So under the stairs is Durer's column, which is a stone that we made another version of, like there are many, many versions of. And then this is an eye, a technician's box in another kind of theatre, again in Galway, which is medieval buildings where we just put some things into it and then took a yard and filled it full of stairs and put the toilets underneath it, liberating all the old doorways. So it's really about doorways, this one. And all theatre, I suppose, is about doorways. Again, the snorkel roofs get down into the little green room and the staircase. And then the floor is ramped for universal access, which foreshortens the perspective in the foyer, which makes it fun. If you're taller or shorter than the person that you're talking to, you naturally kind of adjust. Like I find myself kind of going uphill. So these are all kind of paperish projects. It's about really Dawn, the chief designer. If Dawn is Vitruvius or if Dawn is well, if Dawn is Vitruvius, if Dawn is Daedalus, if Dawn is you, like if the architect, like this kind of thing about paper projects, the paper architecture, the transitory, the drawn, the scheme, the party. It's interesting that, say, you know, Vitruvius lasts so long, but his buildings haven't. Like Fano, there's only a little bit of column left. There's no record, there's no drawing. All his machines have gone, but the book lasts. So here is Korolev, as he's called, SK, the chief designer, putting a man in a sphere, just like Boulez does, just like the Pantheon does. But his one is actually a 1:50 model of the monument to Newton. It's 2.3 meter diameter. He's now not in the middle, akimbo. He's now on his side. He's at 65 degrees. His head is slightly aft of center, so that when the retro rocket fires and wants to push him off the orbit to fall to Earth, that his weight, he is cargo, he is nothing but cargo, his weight will actually naturally, with drag, reorient the ball to come down. The well-tempered environment. So we make books. This is a book about circles. This is that book then printed large around a hoarding that becomes a zoetrope as you drive around it. This is a book about turf. This is about north. She's sitting facing north. This is a book about water. This is Arethusa, the one I showed you earlier. This is Splashdown on the right. This is a book about notebooks and drawing and working it out, and collage, and gardens. So on the right is the desert hieroglyph bush hammered into concrete, and the hand is painted on. This is a book about books, type, decisions, how you make them, which was about making an exhibition about another architect's work and organizing it as 5 volumes and making a chair to sit on to read it, and then arranging it, stacking it in the 5 volumes as a small architecture in itself within several venues. First one was a little repository, then in a different kind of space, so it's arranged a different way. The book is for free, it's for taking away, so with each exhibition it diminishes, it's remaindered. So the project changes in scale and or arrangement as it goes through different venues. So in this last one, in the Hugh Lane, we also made this little gazebo pavilion for looking up, because all the Georgian room, this is a William Chambers building, all the Georgian room had been damaged. The mouldings had been damaged, the plaster had been damaged, but yet the interconnection of the gallery meant that you had to go through that door and that door to get through. And the director didn't want people to see the damage. So we made this little kind of homage to Chambers Casino at Marino, where you can only look up out of plywood. So it's a pop-up casino. It's a house of cards. But then to the room, which nobody sees, it's cut like this. You can see the damaged plaster all around. And then that gets bigger and becomes a canopy in an airport. It's a sign in another way for a bar. It droops down to offer a light. So another timepieces, this is a clock, which is inside it holds, it's the pump house that I showed you way earlier on in plan, the little square. And it's inside it is computers for monitoring flood levels on the adjacent underpass. It's precast concrete, again locked in like a house of cards, but there's cores of acrylic cast into the precast concrete. And inside then they're all wired, so color comes out through them. So you can program it to say happy birthday, or, you know, the time, or which team won. Another time machine, another pump house, this one for sewerage. This one acts a bit like a temple, axial to the main street, but then becomes a building in the round, both to the park and to the commuter. It has a slot through it, which naturally ventilates it. So you can see the slot, which is back to back. The departments don't want to talk to one another. This one is the Department of Sewage, and in the triangle is the gardening department, and they have back to back service rooms. But in section, the two louvers, that skewers, that's fresh air going through this building, which is very smelly. So you see it here. This twists inside. And then the other two compartments are electricity and backup generator. So it collects all its water and pours it over the generator and makes it, on a wet day, a little pool there. It's built on the remains of an earlier pumping in what is essentially a pumping station, which is essentially a polder. So machines. What's happened now up above with your man is that there's been an error. It's set up so that basically when sensors hit the sun, retro rockets will fire. They fire for far too long. He goes too far. He's beyond his natural decay limit, and he can't detach. The ball can't detach from the equipment supply chamber, and it starts to gyrate. Lights, ventilation. This is in a factory. It's just a vent wrapped in lead. Brings fresh air in one side and allows you to escape the other side. It's an inhabited beam. The space between the underside of the floor and the underside of the building and the floor is just a door height. Hairdressers, deep space, artificially lit, completely tempered, obsessed with colour, shiny floors. Angle of incidence, angle of reflection is all in the kind of conversation. They share travel plans. Another one, this is a department store for hair, where deep slots in the old building start to stack up. Very skinny rooms, again, that are all about mirrors and all about services. And then they're color-coded for doors because it's kind of confusing when you're in there. In an exhibition space, same thing, really, all about services. The air comes in from the edge and goes up through this slot behind the white, with the parent building left exposed. Acoustically, then it's managed where the ceiling fumbles into these base bins in the rooms that are performance, and all the projection is then onto the walls or the glass, and the floor goes right through. So there's an encouragement. This is an information center for overseas aid, so it's about allowing the citizen to participate in the information without necessarily going inside. So buildings. So finally, he gets out of that scrape and he separates. Man and machine separate. The machine lands. He's self-conscious coming down in his beautiful orange dome, he's Vitruvian again. He sees hills, mountains. He sees clouds. This is another water collector. This one's about the top of this hourglass, this in situ concrete hourglass, is the predicted height of waters in Dublin in 2100. The middle is the high tide of the Dodder. This is called Arc. And finally, this is a north point. This is a building. It doesn't have any scissors. It doesn't have really any paper. It's just a building. The fickle sisters of, rock, paper, scissors, function. What is it? Function. What is it again? Firmitas, utilitas, venustas. It's all venustas. It's all firmitas, actually. Utilitas is debatable. And here we go. It's a monument. It's a temporary monument. It's a timepiece. Which it's an N. It's N cubed. It's got an M in the middle. It's dedicated to Santa Claus, Nicholas of Myra, who is the owner, is the patron saint of many things, but most particularly owners of property. So it's Santa's grotto. It was, as Michael said, donated, crushed. It was a temporary thing. It ends up as the fertilizer for the Giardini in Venice. So 17 years later, I really like this on the left. This was in the newspaper the other day in Ireland, the Irish Times, and clue number 28, 28 down, is its name, N3. So it's permanent. It's kind of remembered and kind of loved, and that's the assumption.
So we have some time for questions and comments while you're getting oriented. Thanks, Chris. Where were, just a few clarification things, where were all the houses that were all alike but moving from outside inside?
Oh,
that's Dublin?
They're all over the island.
Oh, they're all over?
They're north of the island, south of the island, west coast, and then moving in towards Dublin. So in Dublin, one of them is in Cork, but they're all over the island.
Okay, they're not in a single town?
No.
But they're all alike?
Yeah.
I'm trying to, in the domestic projects,
yeah,
it's always a square, or if you can't do a square, you come as close as you can in plan.
Yeah.
And then
there's a few that are outside of. I mean, this is pattern thinking. Like there are a few that are outside, not always.
So when you get further out,
it's a full square.
It's a full square.
Yeah.
But when you come in, it's compromised.
Yeah.
But what is it about the domestic function that drives you toward that when all the other? Is it when they're public that you can go beyond the square? Because some of the public things, even the hairdressers' studios or however you call that.
No, they have no choice because they're in the town. They have to fit in.
So it's.
But if you have a choice, I will always go for.
You will always go for a
villa.
Square.
It's a villa. It's a villa.
You would always go for a square if there's a choice.
Unless there's some massive pressure on it.
Okay.
It's the most powerful object.
Right.
It's the cheapest thing to make.
Right. Mm-hmm. No, I understand. It's not quite true, though.
No, probably not.
Yeah. Yeah, because there were some. It was hard. Like there were some very elaborate shapes, and in the elaborate shape, like the house the sewage house.
Yeah.
And I can't remember some of the other functions. They're, to me, and you guys help me here, they take on a kind of creaturely quality. They seem to be.
Well, they're trying to get. I mean, the pump house. That one is that one is trying to actually do the picturesque. It's trying to do loads of things in different ways. So it's trying to be formal to this little village. It's trying to be a public building, and then it's still a kind of a machine or a shed at the back. Mm-hmm. But then it has to turn around really fast. It has to address the sea, and it's just a bit of fun that you can walk around it and kind of go, oh yeah, what is that in there? Because it's closed.
But it's responding.
It's responding.
Mm-hmm.
It's heavily responding. It's responding as much as it can. It's trying to engage. It's trying to communicate.
Mm-hmm. And where is this a fair question? It seems to me that there are walls and apertures are the fundamental elements, and I would assume materials come later. But then sometimes I thought, well, this is all about just the material.
Yeah.
Does it vary? Is there a consistent sort of starting phasing?
They're all on at the same time. All the registers are on at the same time.
Okay.
This is a particular filter, but they're all on.
Okay.
So it's texture, it's light, it's M&E, it's form, it's geometry, its ratio, its aperture, it's all on.
Okay.
Or as much as I can make it on.
And is the palette of materials intentionally limited, or is it just that that's the contingencies?
No,
of
it's
these
limited. It's coded as well.
Okay.
It's coded like in my head. Like it's. I'm trying to say. I'm not saying this. I'm trying to. Yeah, I tend. There's a taxonomy. There's shiny things. There's dull things. There's soft things. There's hard things.
Okay.
There's stony things. It's done like that.
Right. Okay.
And then I put them together.
Okay. And then, I'm stalling while you guys think of questions again, right? You understand that, right? I hadn't seen all these things. I had seen mainly that very elaborate house that I think is there's a lot of existing gardens that you've kind of intervened almost over years, it looks like.
10 years.
And so I had always, because those, and I knew the Venice Project, and so my whole frame for your work originally was Earth. And now I realize that's not right. But, something about massiveness, a kind of care of ordering, careful placement.
No, I like gliders as well. I like gliders.
Yeah, it's
I like
not
caves,
about
caves and gliders.
Caves but then the story that framed the whole thing was all about looking back, but it's the glider. I mean, the astronaut story.
It's the Paratens thing. It's just a way of. It's really what I was thinking about was. I mean, what I was thinking about is the Vostok is the ultimate in 1961 well-tempered environment. It's got noxious outside it. Everything is artificial. His suit is a vehicle. His suit is an architecture in itself. His helmet is another thing entirely. In fact, he's completely constructed. He's got wires under his skin. So I'm kind of going. This is a really beautiful model for looking a lens through. It's got windows. It's got a door that's a window, that's a hatch. It's a way of thinking about the world, but it's also a way of thinking about this really complicated. It's like puts the whole problem of architecture into a ball, like the Pantheon does. So that's kind of what I'm thinking.
No, I get it now. Yeah, especially the apertures and the machine.
Yeah.
There's
And it's also deeply funny. Like, I mean, that stuff about, on the back left-hand wheel of the truck in the morning, that's true. Cosmonauts still do that to this day. Even they, all of that stuff about drinking tea and all that, that's all fact. All the quotes are fact. That's what Dawn, that's what ground control said. That's the first thing, the ground control. That's what Earth said to the satellite, to the stylite. He said, by the way, is it really round?
Yeah. Well, you can't be sure, can you?
Not really. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I have one more question before you start. Why do you teach? And the reason I'm asking that is I think people teach when they have a kind of system that they may not have it, but they're looking for it. But it's not, I don't think teaching is personal.
No.
And I think some of your work is really personal. Do you teach like you design? Like, I think I teach like I think. But do you teach like you think, or do you teach differently?
I like the conversation.
The conversation.
I like the conversation.
Okay.
I'm interested in the conversation, and then tropes emerge. But I think it's about how you think. I mean, this presentation. I was thinking about, like I said at the beginning, I was thinking about the conversation that we were having, and I was thinking that it was a vaguely didactic message, kind of an uplifting message about that the world is all out there. And actually, it's kind of all been done before, but it actually hasn't been done at all. And if you just kind of look at it, if you look at it really closely, you can kind of find yourself within it, within the subject. So I'm kind of chasing that dragon. That's what I love. That's what I love in teaching.
Yeah.
That kind of.
So, but your design work is connected, but it's not direct at all, is it?
Well, that's just that's just the way I kind of figured it out. But that has got nothing to do with
The way you teach.
no,
Uh-huh.
no.
Yeah.
The circumstances, under the circumstances, this is what I've ended up.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, it's under the circumstances.
Yep. If you could write as well as you architect,
Yeah.
would you rather write?
I'd love to be able to write. I
Yeah.
wrote that thing.
That wasn't
I wrote
quote?
that.
That wasn't a book.
No,
a
I
quote?
wrote that.
I was Google booking. I
No,
looked at
I've
Google
written-
Book
that's the-
and I put in the sentences to try to.
That's the beginning of the book. I wrote a little book, a Schubert, a silly little short thing.
Uh-huh.
But that's the beginning of it.
Well, I actually thought it was J.G. Ballard at first.
Yeah.
Didn't you hear a little
That's
bit of Ballard? A little
That's
bit.
all right.
Yeah.
That's all right.
No, it's not bad.
That's
huh?
all right.
It's not bad at all. It's not bad at all. They're short. Yeah. It's not bad at all.
Yeah.
I want to watch out for this thing. Doesn't make me too loud. Wait, first to clarify, the capsule that Pilot was in, he didn't make that, right? He didn't design that capsule?
Dawn designed it.
Don designed it, right?
Yeah.
But it's almost so close to him, almost like the womb, that you imagine it has to be made by him to fit him.
Well, no, it was the other way around. That was the diameter of the machine, and then they chose somebody who would fit it, who's
he's-
5'2".
Right, but so in all those things you went through after, it's all made to fit as closely as possible to what the site want, to what the builders want, to what the people in there want.
Yeah.
But is it important that it can never actually be made by them? That you always have to come in and make it for them?
That's really interesting, because then you're into this triangle again, which I'm kind of in the middle of elsewhere at the moment, between the client, the architect, and the builder. You know, utilitas, firmitas, venustas, whatever way you want to look at it. And then you get into the role question of the architect. And there are lots of ways of going about that. Lots and lots and lots of ways of going about that. I enjoy a certain role, but I think there are many, many roles and expanding roles for how an architect thinks and what they can do. So I think that's a variable. I think most things are a variable, but in my case, I like space. I think essentially the subject is really, it's about many, many things, but at its essence, it's about space, and I like thinking about space. And space has to be kind of sharp, and that means you have to be kind of controlling. Yeah.
Does this? Oh, sweet. I was wondering a bit, because I mean, obviously there's kind of, in presenting this, there's the speech, but I feel like a lot of the buildings seem to sort of make fun of speech instead, and some of the monuments especially kind of seem to more present themselves as a thing in itself.
Correct.
Which has the potential for speech, but doesn't really go there. So I'm wondering then, whether speech has the same presence in work when you explain it as when you design it.
No, they're independent. You walk away, it has to stand on its own 2 feet, whatever it is. If it doesn't speak, it doesn't work. But I can't speak for it. This is an architecture in itself, performance, oratory. This is a performance thing. This is a timepiece, you know. It's a book, you know, it's a viva voce, whatever way. But speaking, architecture can't speak. It doesn't speak like that. It doesn't want to. Writing about it, it's very tricky circumstance. I prefer when they're really silent and really powerful, like really, they're sort of. Actually, you can't get them the first time. You don't even notice them. It's only after. It's kind of, that feeling. Do you ever get it? That feeling of architecture. It's actually a very precise kind of. It's more like a temperature, and it's quite rare.
Is a narrative required for the creation of aura to you? Do your buildings care about that? Do your projects care about that?
No, I do. Personally, when I'm thinking about things, I kind of try and, you know, when you're trying to generate enough fact or enough fiction to actually engineer your thoughts to kind of design something where it's raw material, it's, I suppose what you call data or program or sewage or light, or you're just gathering up stuff, naming it, whatever it is. So you're just trying to get enough fuel in the engine to let the thing take off. And then at a certain point, the idea doesn't need it anymore, and it jettisons it like the column, and it's just, and then it has its own trajectory, and it lands. So no, I mean, it's a fun thing. It's a way of, it's about the conversation. It's like, you know, is it a metaphor? Is it a simile? Is it a calligram? It's just, I mean, it's just playing, really. But it's kind of ludic in that it kind of allows a situation to develop where there's a kind of an order. It's, you know, what is this thing like? It's like an abattoir. No, it's not. It's like a, you know, it's like a boudoir. It's, does that make sense, Grace? No. Yeah. That's what I do that all the time. But that's going back to the introduction. I mean, maybe that's. I work with other people all of the time. I don't draw. I'm always talking to other people, whether they're students or people in the office or clients. Talking, far too much, obviously. That's the first operation, isn't it? Of, you know, you have to say to the person, what do you want? And you have to say to the other person, build it like that. And then you have to step back.
Tom, your lecture and this whole discussion has been such a unique and well-rounded, for me, sort of meditation on the relationship between text and design or building. And I really appreciate my impression always as a Irish descended American, and in my visits to Ireland, has been very much about that place as a storytelling nation.
Yeah.
So the elaborate sort of introduction that you gave to your work, and the idea that somehow there's a narrative threading through these things, and only then to learn that, well, the narrative in some sense comes after the fact, or comes from the same material, but perhaps isn't constructed the same way as the buildings, and that there's a kind of a loose fit between those two things. Yeah. The presence of the hieroglyphics in your presentation and also on the wall of the building also felt instructive to me that perhaps there's a level of interpretation that can happen with building over a very long time. They cease to mean the original thing that was intended, or the original story, that other people can come back and interpret new things in them. So, I mean, I guess the comment and perhaps question at the end of all of this is about what it takes to build in a kind of interpretation or interpretability. And I think it had to do with something Michael said about discernment or editing, about not all things can go into those buildings. They have to be highly controlled. They have to be very edited. They have to have certain material palette that performs in certain ways that you are visually, rationally, but also intuitively controlling. And I wonder a little bit about sort of that the creation of uniqueness, creation of idiosyncrasy as a starting point for launching other people's narratives when they talk about these buildings. That's maybe a kind of take on it. Was that a question?
I mean, that's up to them. I mean, that's up to them. I think that's up to them. I mean, you see, if you write a book, you expect somebody to read it as a book, which is a much more precise reading. I like architecture because you know that kind of thing where we're trying to do windows in Core at the moment, and we're looking at windows and we're kind of going, well, if that's how do you feel about that? What does that feel like? Because if you draw it, then maybe if you reproduce, that will reproduce the feeling that you have about that window, that you like it or not. Otherwise, you're alone as an architect, as a designer. So there's a kind of a reciprocity between your experience, the mechanics of your experience, and then the reproduction of what you think that experience will be. And it's so that's a silence thing. manipulating a situation with writing is a far more heady thing. You know, it doesn't have the body in it. Architecture is full of the body. You can move around it, you can be in it, you can be far away from it, you can be above it. You can, you know, it's got all of that. So, is that an answer? Is that
but it does. There seems to be something. I totally agree with Mark, and I think it was implied in Grace's comment too, even about aura, that this relation of text to building, let's say, and they both have. There's something contradictory in the same way about both. They both presume a common space of viewer or listener and speaker or designer. That there's a space in common that we share that language, let's say. And at the same time, which contradicts that a writer of fiction, a writer of a novelist or whatever, isn't so often, I think, trying to propose something about the world outside. It's about writing. He's writing something. He's writing about writing, and the architect is architecting about architecture, which is completely contradictory to the other necessary part. Is that you've got to actually share something, and that's very heavy. It seems to me, because it's almost, and I think. One of the things, and I don't know if you guys felt this, your work sometimes, there's something very archaic about it. There's something very deep and old about it to me. Even the more witty things have a kind of depth, and I think that's part of what it is. That it's insisting that I can read your windows and we can share comments about those windows. We share that. And at the same time, they're windows. They're not about anything else. They're about being windowed, right?
Yeah.
And I felt that a lot in your work. And I think that happens in writing as well. Yeah. Good. Yes.
Thank you, Tom. And I wonder if I could ask, the connection that you just spoke about, it's a visceral thing that the architect tries to, what's the correct word? You have the connection to your building, and when you spoke about how the power of architecture and how it's experienced, and that's a visceral reaction.
Yeah.
And it's a successful building then when that reaction is elicited. And there's a sort of a sense of rootedness, I think, that comes out of that. I always know I'm home when I fly into Dublin Airport, and you can get that sense of the outside, inside. The air is different, and it's slightly damp, and you can feel the breeze coming through. Yeah. And there's that sense of permeability and transition in a lot of your work. Does it stem from a sense of rootedness and sort of visceral connection?
No,
or am I pushing this in a completely different direction?
I think it's good goods. I think, the middle of a plan should have some light in it. I think the air should cross-ventilate. I think it's just good goods, no matter where you are. Of course, these are situated in a culture sometimes where they're communicating to specifics, but I think there's a universal condition about comfort if we're talking about the domestic. In fact, any condition. And so, no, I'd be more like, it's really good when you feel nice in a room. If it feels good. It's as simple as that. Trying to figure out how do you make that good? How do you make a good room?
And when you relate that back to literature then, and the meaning that's inherent in, there's a very rare recording of Yeats reading his own poetry, and it assumes a completely different logic when you hear it in his words.
Oh, I know, and he was tone deaf. Do you know that? and the little trumpet thing, the ear trumpet, that's because of his amusia. That was a monument to Yeats. That was on the Lake Isle of Innisfree. That was where you were looking through it, and it's a Lake Isle of Innisfree, but it's actually an ear trumpet. It's going, excuse me, because that's the first thing he said when when the radio went on. He went, what? What's that? He for such a lyricist, he had amusia. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Tom, thank you so much. That was a lot of fun.
Okay.